I'm here today with Andy Cohen, who is the director and writer and producer, I think, of the documentary film Ximei, which is about a young peasant woman from China who has contracted AIDS in her childhood and is now fighting for the rights of AIDS patients in her province. One of the first things that I noticed when I watched the film was that the protagonists and Ximei and all these other AIDS patients, they're very, very isolated in China. And how did you come across Ximei and her work, and how do you get in touch with someone? Because I imagine it must be quite hard for her to communicate with people from outside of China.
Okay. Yeah, so one of the great difficulties in filming Ximei, it took us 7 years to film, was precisely what you asked, because these are AIDS villages, meaning that the people are sequestered, a lot of them under house arrest, and they're not allowed to move outside of the villages. So there's a press blackout. So to get in, we needed to have people who knew the area and set up a little bit of an underground network, because even Ximei's neighbors were informants. So they were, either compensated with money or, extra privileges by informing on Ximei. So it was very difficult. And I first met her, Ai Weiwei had introduced me to a friend of his, Ye Haiyan, who was an activist. And then she introduced me to Ximei. So basically through Ai Weiwei, I met Ximei.
Oh, okay, right. You mentioned that the film took 7 years to make. That's a very long time to make a documentary. Was that sort of like an on and off process? So did you go to China for a short period of time and then you had to leave again and had to come back?
So what happened was that because in these villages, in Henan province, it's very, very rarely do they see foreigners. So I stick out like a sore thumb. So I had some other foreigners come with me on the first shoot, and within minutes, the police came, and then we kind of had to scatter and hide our footage and get out of there. So throughout the 7 years, it was a cat and mouse game with the authorities. Every time we would come in, somebody would inform, and then we'd have the cops on our tail. So we'd have to pack up, run away, go to another location. Inevitably, they would find us. And a lot of times, they took our equipment, and they also took our media cards, and they confiscated it. So a lot of footage was lost. So that's why it took so long. You can see at the end of the film, even the last time we went to what used to be the wheat fields, and now there's big cornfields. Even there, we thought we were totally hidden. Within 10 minutes, the big, shiny black sedans of the Communist Party showed up and escorted us out of town.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, you see that towards the end of the film, you see sort of a confrontation between you and a Chinese government official. So how often did you have to like jump back and forth between China and you go in and out of the country? Did you count it all?
I didn't really count, but I would probably say 4 or 5 times. But the thing is, they don't kick you out of the country. They just kick you out of the province. Oh. So they really escort you and they say, now you're out of our jurisdiction. We don't care what you do. So it's their, in a totalitarian regime, they have total control and they try and create arbitrary fear. So by, trying to keep arresting not only us and harassing the crew, but actually our subjects. So Ximei, was under 24-hour, 7-day-a-week surveillance. So the central government has its power, but the local government has its own power. So they have their own version, and kind of, it's like the Wild West. They can do whatever they want. So they, they keep an eye on all the AIDS. They keep an eye on all the AIDS victims that they gave AIDS. So the ones that the government gave AIDS to are the ones they don't want to tell their story. So AIDS victims and AIDS sufferers and AIDS patients in Beijing or Shanghai, they get good medicine and they live a normal life like everybody else in the world. So it's a disease, it's a virus that you can live with and function. Normally you can have children and everything. But these particular AIDS victims in the AIDS villages, they were peasant farmers, and the government wanted to take their blood and make profit off of them. And so they contaminated them with equipment that was hooked up. So you had like 10 farmers hooked up to one machine, and the platelets were flowing in between everybody's veins. Nobody screened the blood afterwards. So when people were getting blood infusions, or even when they got off the machines, they were infected with AIDS. Now, the government said, hey, the untapped resource of the blood of our peasants, we can make a lot of money, we can make blood products. So they make $5 a month. Let's give them $5 for every vial they give us. So the farmers lined up around the corner 2, 3, 4 times a day giving their blood. and then it just became an epidemic.
Yeah.
So it seemed like an easy profit became a big health scandal. So the totalitarian regime of China wanted to clamp down on it. And you can see from the coronavirus, their ability to close off neighborhoods. So they closed off these neighborhoods and they sequestered these people. And and lives of misery. Even in the villages, they're discriminated against. They can't go shopping. They say, oh, those are the AIDS people. So that's why Ximei made her Ximei house. She made a halfway house that welcomed all these people who, were discriminated against the government, because they would have to come in from farms like 30, 40 miles away, come in, pay for food, pay for transportation to get their medicines. As you can see in the film, they only get medicine once a month. So it's every day, waking up sick, getting up, getting your medicine, it's, not able to work. It's really difficult. That's why there was a lot of suicides amongst these patients. Sorry, I'm on, so if you have any questions.
No worries. It's your movie. We want you to talk about the film, so that's perfectly fine. All the footage that was confiscated by the authorities, did you ever see any of that again, or did they just keep it and it's all gone?
Again, destroyed the cards and took it. But we had Weiwei has this great cameraman who was Chinese and local, so he was able to fit in there. And so we got a lot of footage through Weiwei's cameraman, and a lot of Weiwei's footage. And then our cameraman, he got arrested. He ended up spending over a year in jail. And it was his camera that confiscated and his media cards that got destroyed. So the wedding scene came from another person who happened, was putting on, who was making videos of the wedding. It didn't come from our cameraman.
Oh, okay. Wow. It's hard to grasp for someone from here, right?
Yeah, you're in Germany and the West. If you have a problem, you can protest.
Yeah, sure.
Like one of Merkel's policies, everybody gets together, they march in the street. China, you can't do that. In totalitarian society, you cannot. So it really shows you what Ximei was up against. Here's a girl, she was born under the one-child policy. So her parents already had 2 kids, so they gave her away. So that already is a tough card to be dealt as a kid. So her adoptive parents really took good care of her, and then they died when she was young. So that's another blow to her. So now she's an orphan. So now she's working in the wheat field at 10 years old. She falls asleep because she's really tired working with the other kids. And the thresher caught her scalp, her hair, dragged her into the threshing machine and cut off her scalp. Luckily, one of her friends pulled her out, but she woke up 2 days later from being in a coma and given blood transfusions, blood all over. You saw the hospitals were very, very nasty conditions. So now she's given AIDS. So parentless, adoptive parentless, an orphan with AIDS. And in those days, nobody knew what AIDS was. These hospitals were unequipped. So scared that she was going to infect people, they put her in a courtyard. She was the only one in a courtyard. They kept her there. Here's this young girl in a courtyard, nobody around. So her uncle, her adoptive father's brother, it was not even her family, he was the only one. He went into debt to bring her food and take care of her. So she wanted to kill herself in the hospital because nobody would see her. She was discriminated against, even the doctors and everybody. But the one thing that kept her alive was she realized that the dogs and cats in the courtyard loved her. They'd come up to her, they would lick her and play with her, and they were the only animals, the only creatures on this planet who were other than her uncle, her adopted uncle, who wasn't scared of her. So she realized the love of the pets, and that kept her from committing suicide. Yeah. And then as the AIDS epidemic grew, more patients came and they filled up the courtyard. Because in this epidemic, they had designated hospitals for AIDS patients. You couldn't just go to any hospital. So peasants had to come from all over to this one hospital in the courtyard. So the courtyard started filling up. And then Ximei was the old timer there at the ripe old age of 16 or 17. And she counseled these people because they all wanted to kill themselves. And she had been there. So she transferred the love she received from the dogs and the cats. It gave her a reason to live. She transferred that to the patients. And Ximei's like a natural born therapist. So she counseled people and stopped them from committing suicide and helped them with their IVs and learned how to get medicines and everything because they were only allowed to get domestic medicine. They weren't even allowed to get imported medicine, so that's why you see everybody with terrible side effects, their kidneys and livers, the way they walk, their hands get all crippled up, and that's the side effects with the imported medicine, from the domestic medicine. So anyways, she realized she can serve a purpose. And then she opened the halfway house. So when they got out of the hospital, they had to come get medicine. They can stay at her halfway house. They wouldn't get discriminated against. They had a bed, and she cooked for them. So here's this woman who is just taking on the world and giving care and love to everybody. And then you can see later on her political activism awakens because she realizes why should they have to go to designated hospitals? Why should they get the same care that anybody who has any disease is taking? Why can't they have the best medicines? Why can they not leave their village? Why can they not talk to the press? So now she takes on a totalitarian regime. And like you said, it's not like the West. You can't go out there and protest for your medicine. You can't protest for equal rights for patients. They can't get work because they have AIDS. So they can't protest for labor rights. You do, boom, jail, house arrest. So it just shows you what she had to fight, this frail woman who's given the worst hand possible in life, how she overcomes everything, fights one of the greatest totalitarian regimes in the history of totalitarianism, single-handedly, and brings joy and hope to her patients and keeps them alive. It's quite a feat, quite a heroine. She's like the greatest hero alive.
Yeah.
Special woman.
Yeah, she's very, very inspiring. She's so full of life still. With all the stuff that's happened to her, she still finds humor. She's still joking around.
You got it. It's the humor that keeps.
Yeah, it's really, really amazing. When I watched the film, I was like, wow, nothing good's ever happening to her, and she still gives so much joy. She's helping everybody. She has this halfway house, and all the pets are there as well. Like, you see the cats on the tables and stuff. It's really, really cool to see.
Animals are there exactly from her days in the hospital. And there's one scene just to exemplify the point about how you say she uses laughter to transcend the horrific and tragic situation in the dirty hospitals and the needles and IVs. There's that scene in a hospital in the summertime, and it was hot, and it was humid. And these hospitals don't get air conditioning. That's one thing she's fighting for, rights to get air conditioning, or at least fans or toilets that work. So they're all laid up with their IVs, all her friends on the bed sweating like crazy, miserable. And all of a sudden she gets this idea, this joke about how to call up the Communist Party and make fun of them, that the fan is going to fall down and break them. And she gets everybody laughing. So here they are in misery, dying, getting IVs just to get propped up, to get another week of life in them. And then with her jokes and her personality, she gets the whole room cracking up laughter, so they take them out of that tragic moment and they transcend and becomes this beautiful moment of happiness. So she shows that no matter what happens in life, you can find happiness and you can find a way to get through it.
Yeah, she's a very inspiring person, I think. So are you still, do you still keep in contact with her? Do you know what's sort of going on in her life? Has anything changed in the wake of, the release of the film?
So when we released the film, she had never had a passport. She never traveled before because she wasn't allowed to. So we realized through our underground system that we were able to get her to circumvent the local authorities, get her up to Beijing, apply for a passport, and get on a plane to come to Geneva, because there was the Human Rights Council going on here, and the film festival in Geneva is coordinated with the UN. So the central government is not so connected to those local governments. So she was able to get the passport and she was able to come. But when she spoke at the UN, and the film festival, but when she went back to her hometown, the locals were waiting for her because they caught wind of what happened, and they put her back under house arrest, stole her telephone. All the people who were in the film, they made come down to the police station, sign statements. They gave a real hard time because they had my number also, and they threatened me. And then they put her under house arrest. But because she spoke at the UN, there was a press conference for her. They were really taken by her after the film. They invited her to give a press conference at the UN. In the UN, if you go and you plead your case in front of the UN and then you go back home to your home country and you have reprisals, then they jump into action. They take it very seriously because they don't want people getting punished to speak at the United Nations. So then through all kinds of negotiations and pressure, the UN put pressure on the Chinese government, and then now she's getting compensation for her medicine. And she was allowed to not travel, but she was allowed to leave her home village to visit her uncle. But now with the coronavirus, they're using that as another weapon to keep her from moving. So in classic Ximei fashion, when she got all these privileges, she says, this is not fair. If I'm getting good medicine just because I went to the UN and everything, how about all my patients? So she's sharing all her, everything that she gets with the patients. She's still fighting that if she can get these compensations, then everybody should have these compensations. She basically wants everybody just to have proper medicine, proper hospital treatment, not to be discriminated against, able to work like anybody in the country with AIDS. In China, when there's AIDS Day, you see these big, red, bright, shiny commercials. Everybody's happy, living a great life on China is one of the great nations in advance in medicine, but in these villages, in these AIDS villages, it's completely opposite. You can see they're dying.
Yeah, and
So,
you can
so
see.
bottom line, nothing's really changed for her.
Yeah. You can also see that in the film when she talks to officials, or when she talks to the UN official that asks her what she wants for the people in the villages. She's not making big demands. She just wants, something that the people can work, earn a little money. It's not like those are some radical changes she's suggesting. She just wants basic necessities.
So humble, so in the humility of her coming to him, she said, "I just want recognition of the Ximei house, interaction, because the Ximei house, as you see in the film, gets closed all the time. The government cracks down. They don't want AIDS people to get together because they're scared that they can protest and petition. They don't want them petitioning Beijing because it makes the locals bad, so they keep them there. So she just wants the basic things: medicine, the right to medicine, the right to work, and the right not to have her halfway house closed down so she can get petitions that the government is not caring for. The ultimate goal is all the patients who were given AIDS by the government black blood program should die out, and with it, the story gets buried. That's the whole purpose of these AIDS villages. These people get substandard medicine, they're all dying out, they're dying out, and if anybody raises any kind of protest, put them in jail, put them under house arrest. But the thing is, babies were born, and babies were born with AIDS, and they're orphans because all their parents died. So Ximei also has to take care of the orphans. There's a whole new generation. So now they realize you can't just have people die out because the next generation is coming. They have to be treated. So she's also fighting for these babies, this next generation. That's why you see the babies that she adopts. Tries to get homes for.
Yeah, and in the end of the movie, you can see that she starts to take care of this little girl, and sort of adopts her to be her part of her family, which is a really, really beautiful thing to see, I think.
It's amazing how much she gives, this woman. Imagine being Ximei. She's so frail. She's half crippled from the side effects, all kinds of problems from the medicines that she takes, side effects. She has to wake up in the morning and fight just to stand up is a battle for her. Then she's got to take care of the orphans. She's got to take care of cooking for all her patients. She's got to go fight the government. She's got to get medicine for her friends. I mean, this is a woman who is, if there was ever a Mother Teresa, man, selfless, completely giving, completely selfless, and an innate, natural-born therapist. When that woman who was talking about how she has a child, and then she realized that her and the child had AIDS because they were getting sick and the husband ran off, and Ximei, who has no hair, this is a wig that she wears because her scalp was cut off, she has completely bald, and her dream always was to have hair. So here's this woman, has AIDS, lost her husband, buried her child because that child got AIDS and sick and died. She doesn't want to live anymore. So what does Ximei do? She starts touching her hair and say, but look at your hair, how beautiful, look how lucky you are. Me, I'm bald, I got nothing. You, look at that beautiful hair. And so somehow she was able to change the girl and realize that what little bit she has is something, somebody else. And then the conversation changes and she gets her to smile a little bit and said, we met each other because of the AIDS, so it's meant to be. And she always finds the good in the worst. It's an unbelievable quality. If everybody would take a little bit of Ximei with them, the world would be a lot better place.
Yeah, that I have nothing to add to that. So on a slightly different note, you just mentioned the coronavirus, and having witnessed the AIDS epidemic in Henan, what was your reaction, your initial thoughts when the COVID-19 pandemic sort of hit and it was clear that this is going to be like a worldwide thing?
Well, from my experience over the years covering the AIDS epidemic, that was caused by the government, right? Don't forget, this wasn't people who were acting out sexually or using drugs. Not that those people deserve anything, but they were told by the government, sell your blood, be a good patriot, it's good for the country, and it's good for your health to sell your blood. And they were given this disease. And then the government covered it up and sequestered them. So I saw how this apparatus worked, and I heard once Wuhan, and Wuhan is not too far from Henan, it's like a 5-6 hour drive. So I heard once it came out in Wuhan, when the COVID epidemic first broke, when the news first broke, and I heard that it was in Wuhan, I knew they were going to cover it up because that's just what they do. I knew the numbers were going to be completely wrong. They were going to lie about everything. But on the other hand, because it's a totalitarian regime, they have this apparatus, this internal apparatus, this infrastructure, where they can close down cities, states, areas. And because they can sequester areas, they were able to contain the disease. So here's an ironic situation where what they did to the AIDS victims worked against them. But here, their ability to contain huge cities like Wuhan helped contain the virus. So the totalitarian apparatus worked effectively. Whereas if you look at America, as an example, and everybody's fighting, the state is saying, no, I don't want this, and the governor is fighting, the mayor, and one state says, no mask, one state says, that doesn't happen in China. So they crack down. So forget the numbers are all screwed wrong. And, you have to multiply it probably by 20, whatever numbers get that out. But their ability to close down society because they're a totalitarian society is what saved China. So it was ironic, Don't listen to the numbers, but look at the way they closed it down. And you have to say, bravo, China did a hell of a good job closing down. Forget about the fact that they lied, that they covered up and all that. We know that's wrong. But the takeaway is that you can control this virus.
Yeah, do you know if the region where Ximei lives, how this was affected by the pandemic, and if they are sort of doing mildly okay? So
then Ximei was invited to The Hague because they wanted to show her film there and invite her to The Hague. And she circumvented the local authorities, went to Beijing, but because we were texting each other on WeChat, they caught our text and they were waiting for her at the police station. And they said, because they caught our texts on WeChat, they caught her at the train station at Zumadi, and she took a train there and was ready to take the bullet train to Beijing, Zumadi. They were all waiting for her. And 7 people took her away. And they said, you can't travel because of the coronavirus. And these were the early days. Is there a case for it? Yeah, she's in the hot spot and she should probably, I don't know, but they were using that to sequester her again. So then she was having a hard time because there's roadblocks to get her medicine because they have to drive a certain amount of kilometers to get the medicine. She couldn't get that, so she had to kind of sneak around the borders to sneak into her house to get the medicine and get some for her friends. So it was very hard for them to get around during the lockdown. But now she says it's much better, that because of the way that the Chinese government handled it, she feels very safe as far as, everybody's wearing masks, washing their hands, but she feels they did a very good job and she feels safe. But they use the coronavirus as another means to keep her from traveling. So she's not free to travel.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so right now she's in the hospital because her bone is so brittle from all the medicine and the disease and everything. She fell, she broke her knee. So she's kind of laid up. And she sent me a little message saying, please tell the TV station, thank you, because they interviewed us from Vox, and please tell the film festival that we're very happy that they showed the film, and thank you for thinking of her. And she also wants you guys to know, please wear masks.
We do.
The broken knee in a hospital, down there, she's still giving out her good vibes and care.
Yeah. I'm through so far with my questions. Do you have anything to say to the people who just watched your film? Is there anything you want them to know?
I guess, first of all, thank you for watching the film. And I think, again, if Ximei can be a role model for everybody, whatever blow you're dealt in life, whatever hardship you're dealing with, I'm sure Ximei's dealt with it and some. And there's still a way to find meaning and purpose and transcend your tragedy to enjoy life, So if you take a little bit of Ximei's spirit, I think the world would be a better place, and then we wouldn't have to have lockdowns because everybody would wear a mask. I'm saying? If people would just wear their masks, the disease would be cut down, but people don't want to. So human nature is not so giving. So if everybody would just be a little more giving, and here's an example, an extreme example. Ximei's such a giver, she's given everything. But if everybody just gives a little bit in their life, I think you can make your neighbor, your friend, your family member a lot happier. And there's this great scene where, don't forget, she was given away as a child because of the one-child policy. And she never knew her real mom. And then later in life, when she had the Ximei house, the mom figured, oh, wow, there's a place to sleep. She's got food there. I'm going to get reacquainted with my daughter. So Ximei even forgives her mother, who basically abandoned her as a child, welcomes her with open arms. So I think one of the things also you can learn from Ximei is forgiveness and kindness. Even the people who are abusing her, you can see in the film, she has a certain affection for, and she takes care of, even though it's a cat and mouse game she's playing. So you can transcend and you can find meaning and purpose and dignity even when you're at your lowest level. So I think her particular situation is very intimate, but I think it's a universal story of overcoming the hardest lows that you can be given, and through no fault of her own. So if she can take on single-handedly the biggest totalitarian regime, I think one of the takeaways I have is whatever problems I have in my life, I can confront them also. So I always carry Ximei around in me. She changed my life. So I'm glad that everybody came to see this movie, and I thank you. And Ximei thanked you. She sent me a text saying, thank everybody for coming to see the movie. And thank her. She did. She's incredible.
Yeah. Thank you for doing this interview. Thank you very much. I hope Ximei is doing well. I hope you're doing well. And yeah, thanks for doing this. Thank you for letting us show your movie. We're really excited. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kai.
All right.
Take care. Good health, everybody.